Do you rebound in your Yin classes? Do you offer rebounds in between the shapes? Do you enjoy practicing that as a student? Some of you listening will straight away say, of course I do. That's one of the most important things in Yin Yoga. And I 100% agree with you. But I think it's a really good topic of discussion. In my career as a Yin Yoga teacher, I've also been blessed with the opportunity to lecture in Yin Yoga at an amazing yoga academy, AYA in Melbourne. And it's given me a really nice advantage, I suppose, to see what's going on in the Yin world and what kind of things do people come back and tell me about that they're experiencing in their Yin Yoga classes. In that lecture, I always start by asking the group who enjoys practicing Yin Yoga. And I'm so thrilled to say that most of the time, majority of the hands go up. And look, it's not everyone's favorite preference of practicing, I get that. Some people just want something a little bit faster. That's completely fine. It's lovely that we've got the options to choose. But I'm always curious about why people say they don't like Yin Yoga. Some people even tell me they hate Yin Yoga. And I always like it when people tell me they hate something in yoga because something has happened for them that's created pain and discomfort for them. And I'm really interested in that because I want to see how a different option or a different choice might shift that perspective for them and give them the access road in that they may not have had yet. So one day a student said to me, I hate Yin. Full stop, end of. I hate Yin. And I probed a little bit more. That didn't frighten me. I probed a little bit more and asked, what is it about the Yin class that you went to that you hated? And what I found out was that there were no rebounds offered. So after spending some pretty intense minutes in some of the really strong shapes, there was no resting in between. There was no chance for that catch up. There was no chance for that let go. There was no chance for the softness, the quiet, the yin of the practice in between the shapes. And so this patient said that they just ended up getting this accumulation feeling of tension and irritation and frustration through the class. In this same particular lecture, I always end guiding them through a practice, which is a nice way to finish off the practice, a nice way to finish off the lecture. And at the end of that, she said, wow, that's completely different to what I thought Yin Yoga was because of my experience so far. That's totally changed my mind. I really, really enjoyed that, which was great. And it brought the point home how important the rebound is. So then students will say to me, well, why do teachers teach classes, Yin classes without rebounds? And I have to say, I think that it's because they haven't done any training yet. And I know what that feeling is like when you're a new teacher and you get an opportunity at a studio to teach classes. You want to say yes. Of course you want to say yes. And you should say yes. You should always say yes to opportunities if you've got the space for them. But at some point, when you're teaching Yin Yoga, you'll get to this place where you realize, oh, there are things going on here that I don't know how to troubleshoot. I thought this was going to be really simple. This looks like a really easy kind of class. And maybe the person that owns the studio said to you, it's easy, you don't need training, do a couple of shapes, hold them for a few minutes, done. Because people tell me that. They tell me that their studio managers say that to them. And maybe they're not Yin Yogis and they want to include Yin Yoga on their schedules because this is something that people want. But you really do need to go a little further with your training at some point with teaching Yin, because I know on the surface it looks like it's really simple. And maybe you're listening and nodding and going, yeah, there's a lot of complexity to teaching Yin. And I think one of the things that's really challenging for Yin Yoga teachers is being able to have different options to troubleshoot with students when they find a shape difficult because of their structure. Not because there's anything wrong with them, but because for them, butterfly might be really awkward, Or dragonfly might be really awkward. Or they might just have some sort of constitutional extreme tightness in their hamstrings, and you need to figure out, how can I give this student different ways to prop their legs in order for them to feel like they can access what's being offered in this shape. So I've sort of just kind of moved a little bit away from the conversation of rebounds here, but it is related. And maybe you're in that boat. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking, oh gosh, yes, that's happening in my yin classes. I feel like I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, but I love teaching it, but I'm realizing that there's a lot that I don't know yet. So that's okay. Just think about ways in which you might be able to start learning some more. There's lots of online offerings at the moment. There's tons of books. There's lots of different resources for you. But I definitely encourage you to keep staying open to learning, because the rebound is so important. And there's different reasons why the rebound is important. For the student that had never rebounded before that I spoke of earlier, it completely changed the game for her. In fact, she ended up doing my trainings and now she teaches yin and yeah, loves it. Hates it, loves it. What a turnaround. But it's not just that feeling of release that you get after you've come out of dragon or after you've come out of frog pose. It's multi-layered. There's this concept when you're exercising tissues that you stress the tissue and then the tissue must be rested. Whatever you're doing, whether it's more of a yang kind of exercise, and the same if it's a yin kind of exercise. The rebound gives us that. So if we've been stressing tissue, and in yin it's generally a tensile or a compressive kind of stress, sometimes it's shear, sometimes it's a twisting as well. It's under load essentially from that mechanical force that's being applied through it. And after a while, that sensation can get stronger for some people. And over that period of time that you're in a shape, things can start to rise up. Some people settle in deeper, some people get more relaxed the further that they're in the shape. But when you come out of that shape, that tissue really, if you listen to it carefully, that tissue really wants to be left alone for a while. And then it gives you that space to notice, how did that dragon that I just did affect me? What is starting to settle now in the quiet and the spaciousness of the rebound? I didn't even realize that I was clenching my jaw before, but now I can let it go. I actually might have been holding my breath a little bit before, and now I get a chance to come back to my breathing and regulate that for myself. For me, I see the rebound as a beautiful metaphor for life in such that we're usually jumping from one thing to the other very quickly. And sometimes we're planning the next thing before we've even finished the thing that we're in. So we're not often in the current moment that we're having. We're ahead of it or we're behind it. We're trying to make it better. And it's difficult to be present. And sometimes when we launch straight into something new, we don't even take the time to feel how the last big event had an effect on us. How did it affect our emotions? How did it affect our life? How did it affect our breath? Was it super stressful? Does it want some time to rest before we demand anything new of ourselves? So that's what I get every time I rebound. I get this lovely reminder that in between big, intense things, it's great to take stock and just be quiet and rest. It reminds me of a good recipe for sustainability. And if you're trying to create a life that is sustainable and you're always expecting a lot of yourself, big events, big projects, you like to challenge yourself, and there's not that time in between, where do you get that recovery? Where do you get that time to top up and reflect on how you might move differently into the next event? As somebody who's come from that place where I liked challenges, I didn't always give myself that space in between challenges. And I found myself headed to a place where there was burnout. So it has taught me a lot. It most definitely has. And the tissues themselves, if we're going to talk about safety in Yin, I think including rebounds in the practice is part of how we make sure that we're offering safe practice. We don't want to ask those tissues to do anything straight away when coming out of intense poses like dragon or toe squat, for example. And you get that moment to reflect on whether or not it was too much for you. And as that rebounding sensation moves through the tissue that's been targeted, and probably other places in the body as well, you'll get that feeling of rebounding sensation. It may only last for a couple of minutes, but sometimes that rebounding sensation can last into the next day. And if it's lasting into the next day, or even the day after, that is something to pay attention to. A couple of things could be happening. I like to use the example of the thoracolumbar fascia, that really deep, thick diamond of connective tissue in the low back, which is often pretty stiff for many people. If you're doing a lot of forward folding shapes or even some back bending shapes in a Yin practice, that tissue is going to get pushed and pulled and squeezed in ways that it may not get on a regular basis. So sometimes what people can feel after they've come out of caterpillar, or maybe they've come out of snail or variations of snail, is a deep, aching, spreading sensation through their lower back. And for somebody who hasn't really experienced that before in a healthy, rebounding way, it can be alarming. Because injuring our lower backs is this program that we're all trying to avoid. Protect your lower back, which I get. But if you go home that night after the Yin practice, or after you come off your online practice, however you're practicing Yin these days, and it's still lingering, you may not really know what's going on in your body. If it's still lingering the next day or the next day, it could either be that that tissue just hasn't had enough Yin exercise applied to it, and it's being moved and shifted, and it could actually be a good thing. Or what the body is telling you is that what you did was a little bit too much. And please, the next time we do that, can we back off a little bit? Can we prop it differently? Maybe that shape's not working for us at the moment, or maybe we need to find a different way to target the lower back. And so the rebound also gives us this time to listen to the messages and the communication that the body is trying to share with us. If we're always leading with our mind and our will, and we're in that driver's seat and we're making things happen, the body sometimes doesn't really get listened to. Or we think, I'll listen to it later. I've got things to do. And you think, I'll listen to it when I get into bed, and you just fall asleep. So the rebound is this beautiful time of hearing and listening, of stopping, of being still, of integrating, and also doing nothing, and having that beautiful permission to do nothing. No guilt, no responsibility, to just be. We have been very much conditioned to live our lives in the doing, and that the doing equates to our worth, that this sense of how much you can get done, or how much you can report back to people about all the things you're doing and all the busyness that you have to reel off, equates to how much you have value. And those programs are hard to weed out because they come at us from everywhere. I think Yin as a practice gives us the space to begin rewriting a new program around self-worth being equated to productivity. So I think the rebound is so, so important on many, many levels, as I said. And if you want a reminder about how important it is, try doing a short Yin practice and not do any rebounds. Take care of your body, of course, but just see how you feel not having it. And if you're a teacher of Yin listening to this, perhaps think about giving your students a little bit more leeway with how much time they choose to spend in their rebounds. In the same way that we would give people different options on how they might target the quads or how they might target their back. Can you also give them options about how long they may stay in the rebound? You might be surprised. Sometimes for me and my body, I just need a little bit more time. And if that permission has been vocalized in the room, I'll do it anyway, but if that permission has been vocalized in the room, I feel so much more at ease knowing that I can truly take my time and meet up with the group with whatever the shape is that's coming next. So just some thoughts in this discussion about the rebound. I hope there was something in here that you found useful. Maybe you just nodded along. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, that resonates with me as well. Maybe it's given you some things to think about as you continue moving forward on your Yin journey.